Arab junta building better Africa.
When you are being leftist, those quotes just coming into us here at France 24 as world leaders to react to the death of the Pope. And Pope Francis was, of course, nicknamed the Pope of the Poor, inspired by the Jesuit vision of poverty and the movement of priests in the shanty towns. He regularly visited poor districts of the capital and the rest of the country as well before his election to evangelize, to help with social work and to listen as well, to explore his legacy amongst the most vulnerable. We've been to one of the areas where he was often visited before he became Pope and where he celebrated many masses. Let's find out more then in this report.
Shantytown 2124 in the south of the Argentinian capital is one of those that Father Bergoglio regularly visited before becoming Pope Francis. Many of the local people have fond memories of a simple, good man who was close to them. Rita was one of the missionaries who accompanied him.
The Pope sat at this table. He often came here to eat.
Then Archbishop of Buenos Aires, he refused to be called Monsignor.
People would sometimes ask him, "Father, why are you coming here? Why don't you go uptown? You'd be better off there." And he would reply, "I like it here. I'd rather be here with you than in the cathedral."
The parish here is very active, faithful to the teachings of the movement of priests from the shantytowns, which advocates community work. In one of the soup kitchens in the district, which depends on the parish, the women who prepare around 100 meals a day feel that Bergoglio has touched their lives. Betty named her son Francis in his honor.
I feel proud because here we are poor Argentines, and he was one of us, just like us, but a pope.
A representative for all those who live hard lives, often forgotten by the rest of society. Father Toto de Bedia, who runs the local parish, has worked with Bergoglio since his early days and was one of his close friends in Buenos Aires.
He was an austere man. When he said, "I want a poor church for the poor," he didn't say it out of nowhere. He comes from this humble church which is close to the poorest people, just as Jesus was.
During his pontificate, Pope Francis worked towards helping and valuing the labor of the shantytown priests. Even though he has never returned to Argentina, everyone here is convinced that he has never forgotten them.
Report for you here on France 24. We're also getting now that official reaction then from the French President Emmanuel Macron. Let's hear what he had to say.
During his time as Pope, he stood by the most vulnerable, the most fragile, with great humility and a very special sense of the other and of the most fragile. In these times of war and brutality, he was faithful to a tradition that was dear to him. It was the vocation of a man, a bishop, then a cardinal and a pope, who throughout his life fought for greater justice, who fought for certain ideas of humanity, that is to say, an idea of brotherhood that I believe many people identify with.
Yeah, the reaction there of Emmanuel Macron just coming into us. Emmanuel Macron actually arriving on the French Indian Ocean island of Mayotte in the last few hours. He's doing a trip around that region of the world at the moment. Of course, Mayotte recovering from that huge cyclone that hit it just 4 months ago. So Emmanuel Macron landing there in Mayotte and just finding out a couple of hours later about the death of the Pope that we continue, of course, to cover here on France 24. You can see all those images. They're coming into us from St. Peter's Square. Kedvan Gordestani is with me. Of course, it's that word legacy, isn't it, that everyone's going to be talking about now, the legacy of the Pope, what he meant to people, to the faithful, even to people who, were not necessarily Catholics themselves, but obviously were still affected and listened to his words.
Yeah, and I think for those who don't have the sort of religious attachment to the Pope, what he will be remembered for is really his fight for the poor and especially for migrants. And you have to go back to sort of the very beginning of his time as Pope when he went in 2013 to the Italian island of Lampedusa. At the time, it wasn't really as known as it is now as a sort of a flashpoint of the migration issue in the Mediterranean. And he went there and he had these words that really sort of was calling and really pointing the finger at the rest of the world for a sort of desensitizing of what was happening to people around the world, to those migrants. And I'll just mention some of the words he said. He blasted a culture of comfort, which makes us think only of ourselves, makes us insensitive to the cries of other people. So really talking as sort of about the selfishness of this modern world. Then he added, in this globalized world, we have fallen into globalized indifference. We have become used to the suffering of others, saying, it doesn't affect me, it doesn't concern me, it's none of my business. So I think that was one of his main fights. This was very, very early on, just a couple of months after he became Pope. And this is something that he continued throughout his time until his death, really, as long as his health allowed him to talk about these things. Really, migration, the plight of the poor was something that he focused on. Also, the plight of just simply the marginalized in any shape or form. You had a Pope who, for example, went very often to prisons to pray for the prisoners. He actually did this just a couple of days ago during this Easter weekend. So this was something that he really focused on. He didn't want to be remembered as the sort of the Pope that was stuck in the Vatican and only there for these big masses, and that he was the Pope of the people, that he was someone who was easily in contact with the people outside of the sort of pomp and circumstance of the Vatican. And earlier on, when his health permitted, he was a Pope also who traveled a lot abroad, especially in Latin America, of course, because he was the first Latin American Pope. And that for the Western Hemisphere, and especially for Latin America, was something that really mattered to them, the sort of seeing someone coming from their region to be the leader of the Catholic world.
Kedvan, thanks very much. Kedvan Gurjestani, International Affairs Editor here on France 24. Let's bring up once again, full screen if we can, those images that we've been showing you of St. Peter's Square, of course, in the Vatican. You can see on those images people starting to throng to St. Peter's Square, coming to the main square there to pay their respects just a day after. You can see a lot of the square still set up after that Easter service, of course, that the Pope was at just 24 hours ago. It is now just after 11 o'clock here in Paris, same time, of course, as it is at the Vatican, there in the heart of Rome, as people start to gather to pay their respects after the news that Pope Francis, the first Latin American leader of the Roman Catholic Church, has died. The Vatican saying in a video statement he was 88. He had, of course, been suffering various ailments in his 12-year papacy and only just released from hospital after that stay that he spent there, having been rather ill, shall we say, over the last few months, of course. Well, look, going to continue to follow that story for you here on France 24. But first of all, let's look back then at his life.
The white smoke spiraling from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel made Jorge Maria Bergoglio the first non-European pope in 1300 years. Born in Argentina in 1936 to Italian immigrant parents, he grew up in a modest family in Buenos Aires. During his studies, Jorge Bergoglio worked as a janitor and a nightclub bouncer, an unusual profile, but one that didn't prevent him from climbing the ladder within the church. He was appointed bishop, then archbishop, before being appointed as Cardinal of Buenos Aires in 2001. Nicknamed Prince of the Poor, he made clear he wouldn't live in the Vatican like his predecessors, instead choosing to reside at St. Martha's Guest House with other clergy members.
I was wondering, Why did you give up all the wealth of a pope?
I have a need to live among the people.
For his first visit outside Rome, the pontiff chose the Italian island of Lampedusa, where thousands of migrants died attempting to reach its shores. Pope Francis also spoke out for societal stances like homosexuality.
If a person is gay and willingly seeks the Lord, who am I to judge?
Whilst it was a change in message, it wasn't a change in doctrine, as the Vatican reaffirmed that homosexuality is a sin. Pope Francis's statements have been controversial within the Catholic Church, who have tried to maintain unity within it. In February 2019, the Pope held an unprecedented international summit, where he said that the Church was ready to take responsibility for abuse against children.
The Church will do whatever is necessary to bring to justice anyone who has committed such crimes.
Pope Francis also emphasized a more inclusive Catholic Church, but this earned him criticism of conservatives who accused him of diluting the Church's teachings. And a stinging criticism of the Curia, the Church's central government, meant many in the Vatican have long wanted to see him go. After an exhausting journey to Canada in July, he hinted he might follow the unusual example set by his predecessor, Pope Benedict XVI, and resign from the role.
This, with all honesty, is not a catastrophe. There can be a change of popes.
For his critics, Francis did not behave like a pope should. But his supporters will remember him for his simplicity, vibrant personality, and his empathy for the poor.
Jenny Shin there looking back at the life of the Pope. Let's hear now the official announcement, shall we, from the Vatican, making that announcement that the Pope did pass away at around 7:35 local time there.
Dear brothers and sisters, with deep sorrow, I must announce the death of our Holy Father, Francis. At 7:35 this morning, the Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the house of the Father. His entire life was dedicated to the service of the Lord and His Church.
At the official announcement from the Vatican of the death of the Pope at around 7:35 this morning. A little bit more reaction coming into you once again. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi saying that Pope Francis was a beacon of compassion, and we had that reaction as well from J.D. Vance a short while ago. And of course the two men together now, because J.D. Vance, after his meeting with the Pope, has gone on to India, where the two men are due to spend the next few days discussing trade deals. Ketevan Gorgistani, International Affairs editors, with me. Ketevan, is going to cast, obviously, a big shadow, isn't it, over that meeting that's going on between J.D. Vance and Narendra Modi, but at the same time, presumably, they will get down to the business side of it as well.
Yes, and I think it will be a bigger issue, obviously, for J.D. Vance, who it just came from seeing the Pope. He was the last official to have a meeting with the Pope before the Pope passed away. He has probably one of the final pictures of the Pope that will be remembered. And, of course, J.D. Vance himself is a Catholic, so it was a very important moment for him. He obviously did not expect that less than 24 hours later, the Pope would no longer be in this world. And so obviously for J.D. Vance, it will be an odd moment, because there are a lot of political issues and trade wars and very down-to-earth matters to discuss with Modi during this trip. But this today likely will have a sort of a personal aspect to it. And of course, J.D. Vance, who put out a statement on Twitter about the passing passing of the Pope and remembering, of course, the meeting he had with the Pope, but also referencing that long speech that the Pope made at the start of the COVID pandemic, which is something that, of course, a lot of people remember. But so for the U.S. Vice President, it is likely going to be a personal day, even though, as you mentioned, he is going to be meeting with Narendra Modi later on tonight. We don't have any word of whether there is any change in the schedule, perhaps, for the vice president so far, but maybe that could be something that will happen, some delays in the official, very political schedule in India.
A little bit more reaction coming into it. This is the first reaction I've seen from Africa. The Ethiopian Prime Minister praising the Pope Francis's legacy of compassion, and also some reaction coming in from the Russian Orthodox Church. The Moscow Patriarch saying Pope Francis developed contacts and praising him for doing that with the Russian Orthodox Church. Ketavan, you were talking a little while ago and saying that one of the things that Pope Francis was very much criticised for at one stage anyway was for his reaction, and particularly his initial reactions to Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Absolutely, because there was a moment at the beginning where his reaction was, if you look back at the positions of the Pope and of this Pope, whenever he was discussing a conflict, there was always this idea and this desire of backing away and rejecting all forms of war. But the way it translated in what he said about the Ukraine-Russia war seemed to, at least in the eyes of Ukrainians and of supporters of Ukraine, being to both sides, if you will, putting Ukraine and Russia too much on the same level. He initially, when the war broke out, wanted to go to Moscow, sort of as a mediator, as a political mediator, to try to talk to Vladimir Putin, to try to prevent this war from really blowing up. He, at the time, said something along the lines that the war between Ukraine and Russia should not be seen as a cowboy movie with the good guys on one side and the bad guys on the other. And of course, for those who believe, not the Russians, but for those who believe that Russia is the aggressor and Ukraine the victim, this idea that there are no good guys or bad guys in this case was heavily criticized. He also at some point talked about Ukraine maybe having to raise a white flag, so give up, capitulate. These were things that came for the Pope from an idea of anti-war and of avoiding conflict, but translated in this context as something that was really equating the situation between Russia and Ukraine without taking sides. And so over time, he sort of changed the position.
Tatsani malonda anu pa machanelo awa. Makosana with 100 plus subscribers. BS Malawi with 100 plus subscribers. Hot 265 with 90,000 plus subscribers. Sam Mavita with 100 plus subscribers. AMTV Malawi with 50k plus subscribers. Malawi Trends TV with 50k plus subscribers. Dreams Media with 20k plus subscribers. Mpongwe Bongwe with 80k plus subscribers. Crab Junta with 40k subscribers. Komanso Umata Daily with 10k plus subscribers. Ndipo mutakulipeza kudzera pa Malawian YouTubers Association Maya. Utenga wanu udzafikira anthu oposaposa 500,000 pa tsiku. Tilumikizeni kudzera pa email iyi officialmaya265@gmail.com.
Club Junta, building better Africa.